I was originally hired here in 1980 by the Lavallee National Park to do basically mechanics work. But I had a machinist background, so out of that grew some of these projects, this being one of them. When I got out of the service, in 1968, I came back from overseas and I got a job working in a machine shop, and actually down in the mills again, down here, a place called Sorensen Machine. And it was a small little six-man shop, and we did all kinds of different things. It was a very interesting shop to work in. And so it all comes down, we used to build things, so it was like, when I started working for the Park Service, and some of these things were coming up, it was almost like a natural for me to be very, very interested in it. One, this is very interesting work to me, something that I had the ability, some of the training to do. The thing that was the most difficult was the governor. It's a very complicated machine, and I did a lot of reading on that to try to understand how it worked, because it wasn't working when we went to, and I had to get it going. So I had to try to figure out what was doing what, and know what to clean, what to take apart, and things like that. So there was a lot of research, a lot of reading involved in that. We disconnected from the governor every night, every time we shut it down. Yeah. So we started up basically by hand. We set it by hand. But I don't know if you noticed, but when we were doing that, the fellow's constantly doing this to try and maintain the speed on the fly balls, which is controlling the speed of the turbine. And so, as you see it now, it's engaged. Okay, the governor is on, it's engaged, the pin is in, and you can see it's hardly moving. When they were first working on this, restoring this turbine, the company that was doing the restoration is called Ware River Power, and these guys were these guys were sharp on this stuff. So I guess it started out, they had to break open the concrete to the penstock, and they'd open that up, build the gates, gut that turbine, and I can appreciate that, because just what we did to get it going again, we had to cut shafts. Most of the shafts running through the bearings were frozen so solid, I had to bore them out on a lathe, because they were like welded, and some of the stuff can't be replaced. And I could replace the shaft, but the shaft housing, I could make one, but it would take a long time. It's really irreplaceable in a sense. So there was a lot of work there, and then making up all the new shafts and everything else, putting it back together. There was a lot of manual, hard labor, and we did it in the wintertime too, so it was kind of chilly in there. A lot of belt maintenance right now, only because they're all brand new belts. They come in dry and they stretch like mad. Sometimes it would only last 2 days and the belt would be slipping or coming off. And you saw all the lacings we did down there. And we kept chopping off 2 inches at a time. I mean, it just, another one, another one, another one. There it goes again. I mean, that main belt there is probably older than the three of us put together, and I'm 60. We had to repair that belt. We actually made up tools. I made up some tools and we trimmed off the sides because it was running so bad. It was never staying, and it was always moving. So I trimmed about 5 inches off each end of that, each side of that main belt. And then we've been patching it, and because it had break spots here and there. It's a laminated belt. It's about 7/16, so half an inch thick. It's 3 laminations glued together. And so we've been basically restoring that belt. When the government's adjusting, it's raising and lowering this ring, and it sits right in here. So it's inside. You can see where it was, and it would raise it, and lower it to either let water in or shut water down. And then your turbine runner runs in the middle, and you can see a spider base down there, which sits on steel frames down below the turbine. But there's a wooden bearing in there. I don't know if you can see that. And it runs on. It's like a cup, a concave. And it just rotates on that. So this is the actual crown gear you see on the other side. This is called a bevel gear, and this is called the crown gear, but they're both bevel gears. It's the transfer power at 90 degrees. There's a canal that runs all the way to the river. And in the old days, they actually had this thing stepped down, and they would use it 2 or 3 times before they put it back in the river. So they'll have a turbine further down, and maybe even another one. And so they were pretty smart, you know. They would use it a couple of times, because once it hits the river, it's going to Lawrence, and it's no longer usable. So they're getting it from, it's all coming, of course, from upstream, you know, and then in the canal system and into the different feeds. So I think it's one of the best exhibits in the park. I was really happy when our superintendent gave us the money to go ahead and restore it, and I was more than willing to jump in there and do it. It's the real McCoy, you know what I mean? So it's not, you know, some of the things, you know, they're remakes, or you might try and see a picture of something that was there. This is real, it's working. It's the way it worked 120 years ago.